Welcome everyone to Two Intellects Talk About Stuff. Welcome Bill.
Welcome Chrissy. Welcome everyone.
Welcome everyone. Today we're talking about Westworld, Episode 3, The Stray.
Now, this is the episode where we learn a whole lot about what goes on inside android heads. We learn about Dolores and how she dreams of a better future and she wonders about herself and the perfection of her world. We meet Teddy, whose backstory changes how he thinks about the timescale of his life, and then Anthony Hopkins kind of slaps him upside the head. We learn about Arnold, who invented the whole concept of android consciousness and in fact set up the concepts of memory, self-interest, and improvisation, which are in fact the algorithmic cornerstones of any real consciousness, and not just something Hollywood said.
Yeah, I thought today's episode raised a lot of really great issues to develop the theme about what it means to be human.
Well, the thing which excites me so much as an algorithm guy is that Hollywood, on their first pass through the series, is actually making a legitimate algorithmic analysis of what cognition is and what kinds of data flow in and out. And they're treating it as a software problem. I've treated it like a software problem. But they come out with some really cool conclusions about the necessary trade-offs of being a conscious being.
The necessary trade-offs of being a conscious being. I like that. It reminds me of the scene that I want to talk about later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, which is?
I was most interested in the conversation between Bernard and Dolores, and particularly the moment when Bernard says to Dolores, stop, lose all scripted responses, improvisation only.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, cool. I think these are going to fit together pretty well. The scene I was interested in is the one where Anthony Hopkins brings in Teddy, I believe right after he got his backstory, and asks him about it. And Teddy says, yeah, I have this motivation. There's some bad guy and I need to set my life free. I've forgotten the details, but it's a long term. It's a life future plan. And
Yes.
as a character in Westworld, as a coherent character who seems real rather than just going foot by foot across the street, he needs to have a backstory and a long-term motivation as well as a short-term motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So far, so good. That's software. That's what the product is designed to do. Now, Anthony Hopkins upsets that apple cart. He says, oh no, Teddy, your job is to suck up to the customers this week. Now, a whole bunch of people working in a whole bunch of businesses in this country have felt the same thing. They're told on the one hand that they have long-term objectives, but when it comes down to what your job is to make the customer happy right now. And that is a cognitive tension. It's an informational tension. It's not just life sucks. There is no way to answer that kind of a problem. And the thing that it reminds me of is the whole spectrum of informational collisions which show up here. You can call them software conflicts. You can call them business conflicts. But one way or another, it's showing up in a bunch of ways. You know, the calibration drives of an android. On the one hand, it wants to learn how to move its hand better and move its face better and be a more realistic person. But if they do a memory wipe every time it gets killed, they don't get to accumulate much data. And that collision is driving the whole problem of androids having memory, because they're saying, well, we're trying to wipe some of the memory and not the other memory, but it's this whole integrated system and they can't cleave that off nicely. And the other problem is the short-term versus long-term problem that Teddy is facing. Teddy is being, on the one hand, incentivized with a coherent, long-term existence as a character, and on the other hand, he's not only getting the cognitive dissonance of telling him that's wrong, but he's also being given a conflicting goal, which is be nice to the hosts or the guests this week. And that kind of trade-off is a trade-off any informational system faces, not just androids in Hollywood.
Right, yeah. But in some ways, as you said, Teddy is like any employee who is thinks, oh, this is my job, this is what I'm doing, and then one day your boss walks up and says, no, 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 what you're doing is far more crass than you ever imagined. Uh, so in that sense, Teddy is like us. But what I want to hear a little more about is Teddy as an algorithm. Teddy as an embodied, uh, an opportunity for us viewers to see an algorithm in action.
He's not as good for us as Dolores at that, because he's not telling us as much about his internal state. And so I can't remember as many features from the film. There's one scene where he's asked, what are you doing? And he says, well, because I have to go off and do things. But Teddy tends to answer in platitudes. He's not giving the specifics like Dolores is about what he's doubting about the world and how it doesn't make sense and what he's trying to do to resolve the conflicts. Dolores, on the other hand, keeps saying, not only, I think that if I know who I am, I'll be free, but she keeps being interested in being beyond, outside the park boundaries. She doesn't know they're park boundaries, but she wants to be beyond everything and understand the whole picture of her life and not just a day-by-day piece. That isn't just a yearning to be human, as a philosopher might say, and hem and haw and then drink his brandy. That's necessary for having a mind which makes sense. If your short-term and your long-term views of the world don't make sense with each other, you've got two minds, not one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's one of the reasons why the scenes with Bernard are so interesting to me, as he wants to have a front row seat in the drama of bringing your short-term worldview in line with this long-term worldview. And that's what's falling apart for Dolores particularly, but presumably for the other androids in the park. So when he asks her a question and she responds with her programmed answer, it's a tell for him. There's something more going on. So he has his command, stop improvisation only. And after she improvises a response, which presumably is closer to this short-term, the worldview that's informed by immediate experience, he issues another command, analysis. And he wants to know why she said that. And I'm, sort of what you're talking about with Teddy, the conversations on the one hand can be looked at as echoing some sorts of real life situations that we have between employer and employee, or some sort of power relationship. So with Dolores, she's not even allowed to have her own thoughts. Bernard can command her to reveal everything. And in that way, he is very similar to the guest who can command her to take off her clothes. But he's doing it, he's sort of asking her to strip her mind, lay it bare before him.
Okay, so do you see a parallel between Anthony Hopkins and Bernard able to interrogate the mind of a droid and basically get their human pleasure out of the ultimate subjugation of another creature which looks like them? Do you see a parallel with the guests there who are doing the same thing in the physical?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate that the show invites us to draw a comparison between the behavior of the programmers and the behavior of the guests.
Okay, cool. All right, it seems like today was really a day for android consciousness. And so that's how I'd say it. I'd say this is where we learned, we didn't even talk about Arnold, but about Arnold's model of what android consciousness is made of, and of course what we see in Teddy and Dolores. That's what I got out of today.
Yes, very similarly. This was definitely the day for android consciousness, and I am looking forward to learning more about Arnold and what his views were and how he fits into Ford's backstory, as Arnold is a part of that backstory for that character.
Okay. as usual, you're taking the narrative trajectory. I'm
Mhm.
looking at sort of the scientific analysis. Will Hollywood be able to hold on to this really legitimate information-based view of what the constraints on consciousness are? Or are they going to go back to a Harry Potter world where they just wave a magic wand and say, you can think this and you can't think that, and who cares if they conflict? I don't know whether they'll be pulled toward the dark side or the side of understanding what we really are.
Well, we'll see. For now,
All right.
goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for
being with us.
listening.
Take care.